All right, so Hebrews 13:8.
Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Hebrews 13:8.
Awesome. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Hebrews 13:8. Awesome. All right, so yesterday's lesson, we started talking about Joshua. He is now the leader of the Israelites. He is now the one that will lead the Israelites into the promised land. Moses has died, but God didn't end things with Moses. No, the Lord selected the next leader who would lead the next generation of Israelites into the promised land. And so this group is a lot different than the group Moses led. This group is ready, they're courageous, they're brave, and they learn from the mistakes that their parents made, and they're going to go into the promised land. So first thing is the Lord tells them that they would have to cross over the Jordan in order to go into the promised land. There they ran across their first city, which was the city of Jericho. Okay, so Jericho wouldn't have been an easy city to conquer because Jericho had walls, the walls that surrounded the city. Plus, they had their soldiers that would stand on top of the wall watching, and so it wouldn't be easy for them to cross over and just conquer the city, right? They would have to think of a special strategy, a special plan that would help them to conquer the city. So Joshua asked the Lord what to do, and God told Joshua to send 2 spies into the land. The 2 spies will go out and scope the land, scope the city to see, how strong those walls were, what is going on inside the city and what's happening. So the 2 spies went inside of the city, and while they were in the city, they were found out by the king and his soldiers that they were from the Israelites and that they were inside of the city. But they came to this home of a woman named Rahab, and Rahab, she could have told the king on them, right? She could have told the king that these men were here. But instead, when they came looking for them at her house, she hid them and protected them and kept them safe. But that was because Rahab told them that she knew about their God. She knew what their God would do for them, and she knew what was about to come, what was about to happen to her people and the city. And so she said, listen, when you come inside the city, all I ask is that you spare me and my family. Because of me protecting you and keeping you safe, can you keep your word to me? And of course, they were going to keep their word to her. And so they told her to put the red scarlet rope out of her door. And that's how they would know to not go inside of that home and to protect and keep her safe. So Rahab, she helped them, but it was a smart thing for her to do that, to help them out in the way that she did. So now that they figured out what's going on with the city, now it's time for them to actually go inside of the city and to conquer the city. But like I said, it wouldn't have been that easy for them to do so. Okay. So after the 2 spies, remember they had to escape to the mountains. And then after 3 days, they went and they reported to Joshua and told Joshua everything about the city that they learned, what learned about the city and what was going on inside of the city. And so they told him, they said, those walls are strict, they're thick, they're strong. It won't be easy to just knock the walls down. And so they were like, Joshua, what do you think we could do? And so Joshua, he's a little confused too. He's like, okay, how do we do this? And so first thing they had to do though was cross over the Jordan River. Now, the thing about the Jordan River is that it was a river, right? It was water. And so the Lord, he could have took them a whole different way around to go into the city, but instead the Lord wanted them to cross over the river. And so Joshua didn't understand, but God told Joshua, he says, first thing is you need to cross the Jordan River. He says, tell the people that I will be with them, that I live among them, and that the Ark of the Covenant will lead you across the Jordan River. And so Joshua called all the people to come with him to cross the river. And so they were like, how are we going to cross this river? They were like, we can just go around it, right? But that would take too much time. And God said he wanted them to cross the Jordan River. So Joshua told the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was this, it signified the presence of God. And that was something that the Israelites would often have with them, the Ark of the Covenant. So they were walking with the Ark of the Covenant, and the priests went first. And so the priests crossed through the Jordan first. They went ahead of everyone and they crossed first. And as soon as they stepped into the water, it's like the water started to kind of push back, just like the Red Sea when they crossed the Red Sea. And so it was like the same thing happened again. So the children, remember the miracle happened with their parents with the Red Sea, right? They get to experience the same thing with this Jordan River. And so as soon as the priests step in, it's like the Lord starts to push the waters back to where they were able to just simply cross through on dry land. And the people were amazed. They were like, that's how we're going to cross the Jordan. So now that encouraged them even more, because now they're like, well, we're probably going to be able to conquer Jericho then, right? They were like, if the Lord is going to split a sea and dry up a sea for us, then for sure he's going to give us the victory over the city of Jericho. So this increased their faith, and this encouraged the people to see how the Lord was already showing them that he was on their side. He could have took them a whole way around, but instead the Lord said, no, I'm going to split the sea. I'm going to dry it up for you guys to cross over. And so the people, they made a memorial there to remember what God had done for them in that moment. So now that they've crossed over, now it's time for them to figure out a plan to destroy the city of Jericho. So the people, again, they're just following Joshua, and they're like, we don't know what we're going to do. But Joshua, he also didn't know what to do. Joshua's like, okay, Lord, you told me to cross over the Jordan. You're telling me to go and conquer the city of Jericho, but I don't know like what to do. The walls, like what do we do? So Joshua went and took some time to go and pray alone by himself. And he's just like, Lord, what do I do? What do I do? And so he's thinking to himself, he's like, okay, how could we do this? He was like, how do we go into the land? How do we go into the city? So he was thinking and thinking and thinking. And all of a sudden, someone appears. And Joshua gets his sword ready because he didn't know if that was someone from the city of Jericho. And so he gets his sword and he says, are you a friend or an enemy? Who are you? Are you on our side or are you on the other side? And the person said, neither side. I am captain of the Lord's army. Captain of the Lord's army? And Joshua realized that this was the Lord God himself, who said, I'm not on anybody's side. I'm on the Lord's side. I am the captain of the Lord's army. And so Joshua immediately, when he realizes this, he bows low and bows before the Lord, because he realized that this was the Lord God appearing to him. And so Joshua, it's a privilege for the Lord to come and appear to him. And so the Lord began to speak to Joshua, and he says, listen, I will be with you, Joshua, you and the Israelites in this battle. And I'm going to tell you how to conquer the city of Jericho. So Joshua didn't know how they were going to do it, but here the Lord appears to him, and the Lord is about to show him and tell him what needs to be done in order for them to conquer the city. He says, listen, this is the battle plan, Joshua. You and your army, you are going to walk around the city once a day for 6 days. Okay? So for 6 days, they would walk around the whole city of Jericho. They would walk around the walls of Jericho. For 6 days, they would do that. He says, you're going to have a long procession. It's not just going to be you and your army. He says, you're going to have thousands of armed men, and they're going to be followed by the priests, who are going to blow trumpets. They're going to have trumpets. The priests are going to blow their trumpets, followed by more army men as well. Okay, you're going to march around the city. You're going to march around the city for one time for 6 days. That's all they had to do. For 6 days, march around the city one time. March and go. He says, but on the 7th day, you're going to do it a little differently on the 7th day. He says, as you guys are marching, you're going to actually march around the city 7 times on the 7th day. At the end of the 7 times you march around the city, The priests are going to blow the trumpet, one loud blow, and then all of a sudden the walls will come down flat. That's it. So I'm sure Joshua's listening to this and he's like, what? He's like, we don't have to touch the walls. We don't have to fight. We don't have to do anything. All we have to do is march around the city and blow the trumpet and the walls will come down. That sounds a little odd, right? It does. It's very different, right? The Lord is telling them that they really wouldn't have to do much of anything. Literally, all they had to do was march and blow the trumpet and the walls would come down flat. And so Joshua's like, Lord, this is amazing. And it's a mighty miracle indeed, because the walls are going to come down. And the Lord is like, as long as you do it as I say, watch what will happen. So Joshua goes and he tells his soldiers what they're going to do. And I'm sure the soldiers were probably like, what is Joshua talking about? March around the city? They were a little confused, but, they followed what Joshua said because Joshua said he got these instructions from the Lord. So they were like, okay, well, I guess that's what we're going to do. So Joshua got his armed men ready. And so I'm sure as the people of Jericho are watching, they're like, what are they doing? But then they simply see them just march around the city. So on the first day they went, marched around the city, and they went back to the Israelite camp. I'm sure the soldiers in Jericho were like, what are they doing? Second day comes, they do the same thing. They come to the city, they march around the city one time, then they go. And again, the soldiers are probably like, the soldiers from Jericho are probably like, what are they doing? Third day comes, fourth day, they do the same exact thing. They just simply go, march around the city, and they go back to their camp. And now the soldiers in Jericho are like, okay, this is strange. And they really didn't think they were a threat. They were like, what are they doing? Marching around the city? But they also knew in the back of their head, they said they got a plan. Their God has a plan, but they just didn't know what it was. So fifth day comes, they do the same thing. Sixth day, they come and do the same exact thing. They march around the city and go back to their camp. But on the seventh day, that's when things change. Not only was it the soldiers that came on the seventh day, but the priests were with them as well, plus more soldiers had come this time. And so now the soldiers are watching and they're like, okay, what's going on today? They have the priests, they have more men. What's going on today? But this time, remember, they didn't march one time. They marched 7 times. So they marched. And so now the soldiers are like, okay, they're continuing this time. So they march once, they march twice, they march a third time, and then a fourth time, a fifth time, sixth time, and then 7 times. And what did God say to do after the 7th? So for the priests to blow the trumpet. And that's what they do. As soon as they finish their 7th lap around the city of Jericho, the priests stop. The priests blow their trumpets loud, and then Joshua yells, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. All of it that is in it belongs to the Lord. So they blow the trumpet, they shout, and it's like all of a sudden, it's like this earthquake starts, and everything begins to shake. The ground shakes, the walls, there are cracks in the walls, and the soldiers standing on top of the walls are like, what's going on? What's going on? And little did they know, the walls were about to come tumbling down. And sure enough, they shake, and then eventually they break and they crack, and the walls start to come tumbling down, all the way down. Whenever the walls came down, there was only one section of wall left up. And when they looked at that one part of the wall that was still up, they had a red scarlet rope outside of that home. And whose home was that? Rahab. So they went and they rescued her out of the city. And they said, don't be afraid. Everything will be all right. They kept their word to her, right? They didn't, lie or anything. They kept their word to her. And they went and they rescued her and they went and conquered the city. All of the gold, all of the silver, all of the spoil is what they call it. All of what they found, the treasures that they found in the city, they took it as their own and they were going to give it to the Lord because it was their first city they conquered. God wanted them to give the first portion of all of the spoil to him. He wanted all of it for himself. Keep this in mind because next week we'll talk about that. What will happen because of somebody not listening. And so they went in, they conquered the city, they destroyed the city of Jericho, which probably would have been one of their hardest cities because of those walls. But look how the Lord brought the walls down. They didn't do anything. No, the Lord said, simply blow the trumpet and shout and march. And look how the Lord made the walls come tumbling down. And so they conquered the city. Yet we see God coming through for his people and him being mighty and strong through his people. And we see his glory as well and his strength through his people. And so Rahab and her family were rescued. All the gold and silver and treasure, everything that they found in the city, they brought it back to their camp, but they gave it to the Lord. It was all going to belong to the Lord. So the Israelites have conquered their first city in the promised land. And now, if you remember their parents were so scared to do that same thing. And look how the children come and they conquer this city with no problem. They had faith, they trusted God, and look at the victory that God had given them. So next week when we come back, we'll talk about some more of the cities that they will conquer as well. And just how God will continue to give them victory after victory. Throughout their journey throughout the promised land. But we'll have a few little problems, like I said, when we talk about next week, because remember, the Lord said, give all of this treasure to him. And someone will miss the memo. And will not do that. Will not do that very thing that the Lord wants them to do. So yes, okay? So the city of Jericho has been defeated by the Israelites. The Lord has given them the victory over the city of Jericho. They have victory, and they're trusting God. And this is what happens when we trust the Lord. He gives us victory in ways that we couldn't imagine. The Lord, he's just, awesome. Okay. All right, guys. So that's it for our Bible this morning on the city of Jericho and the walls coming down. Okay. So I'll see you guys for our Zoom in a little while. Okay. Bye-bye.